Someone told me it was a bad weekend to be a fan of certain genres. Well, I guess this particular genre, it's always a bad time to be a fan because everyone's always dying, and we don't know who's going to end up in the end. I've heard all sorts of theories, all sorts of stuff, but as I'm prepping to watch tonight's episode, boy, is there a lot going through my head. But let's go watch it. Welcome to the heart of the stories we tell. My name is Rob, and tonight I will be reviewing Game of Thrones Episode 3, the final season. And oh boy, the battle for Winterfell. There's part of me that wonders how much of this is based on what's going to happen. I mean, yeah, very specific things aren't the same, but I mean, everyone's guessed for a while now. The wall was going to come down, and once the wall came down, it was going to be Winterfell. And there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. So, is that the last-ditch effort? Is there going to be a running battle south of there? I mean, Storm's End is just as important in the books, right? I mean, there's lots of fortresses. And of course, we have the fact that last week we had one of our big couples start to have a little bit of falling out. And we have all this stuff going on where the others are now coming. And we have this whole theme of loss just hanging in the air and getting ready. And the episode was amazing. But before we get into spoilers, let's talk about what we do around here. Obviously, I do reviews of shows like Game of Thrones, but what I really do is I try to dissect stories, figure out how and why we tell them, and then have a conversation with you, something I can go back and forth with. So if you're interested in joining our little community, come on in. We have a Patreon, we have this, we have Twitter, we have a Facebook group, and of course, you can click subscribe down below. The psychology of what's going on is pretty simple, though. George R.R. Martin has created a world where we have invested, 7, 8 years of our lives, 23 in the case of some of us book readers, who have invested so much that we've been waiting to see. And you see, there's a lot going on. We have an enemy at the gate, and the enemy is the Great Other. The Other is easily demonizable. And there's a lot going on with this. But before we talk about that even, I want to talk about last week's episode, Jenny of Oldstone, and everything going on. So, there were a couple of you that didn't seem to quite get the importance of Jenny of Oldstone and the fact that her and the king her and the prince gave up the idea of being king, and even still had an unhappy ending. So keep that in mind as we move forward. And then there's also the whole thing with Arya. And I'm showing you this because point blank, if I can't get it out of my head, you can't get it out of yours. So there you go. Arya is an adult. She is treated way better than Dany is in season 1, so if you weren't complaining about that, I don't know why you were complaining about this. But okay, are you ready to talk about tonight's episode? Well, I have to throw this up there then, and then we'll get started. So once again, it's stop. Spoiler time. And boom, the Battle of Winterfell. And when did Melisandre learn mass flame weapon? I mean, not that I'm complaining. I mean, obviously, they need the edge, and point blank, part of this is the fact that I couldn't see a friggin' thing for the first 10 minutes of this episode. I mean, seriously, you need to have, real night sight in the real world. Can we get some stage lighting, please? At least Jon and Dany's strafing runs helped a little bit with the light. But I loved the throwback to the pointy end goes in the other guy. I loved the fact that we got to see different people fighting next to each other for what little you could actually see of the fighting. Then comes Light the Trenches. Light the Trenches. And point blank, I mean, the White Walkers bring the cold. That's the problem. And with the dragons being obfuscated by the storm, winter has come. But somewhere behind the scenes, Melisandre has leveled up, and can now cast Wall of Fire as well. Pretty amazing, really, if you think about the amount of fire magic we saw in this one episode compared to pretty much every single other season. But again, I'm not going to complain about extra lighting, because this episode was so dark in so many ways. Although I did love the fact that we had enough time to take a quick break for Sansa to once again be like, and have the whole divided loyalties question, and who and what, and of course, yeah, if it weren't for Daenerys, we'd all be dead. Then we have that great respite where we find out that Bran can actually forgive Greyjoy, even though he doesn't the others. But, oh yeah, by the way, he also could fly around and do all sorts of things. So, why isn't he helping more? Seriously. Oh yeah, because this guy can do all the same. But that's the problem. We're facing an enemy that is basically the most powerful parts of Mel, Bran, Jon, you name it, all put together. And the Hound is perfectly right in his assessment. You can't beat the dead. Fighting a necromancer with an army of undead is impossible. Because realistically, they do not tire, they do not get sick, they do not show compassion. They are endless, and they are inevitable. But that's the thing. The necromancer's the key, and they knew that all along. Now, there are going to be 100,000 sad moments coming up. But one of them, the first one, was the Mormont girl. I was so worried about the death of main characters we've known since season 1 or 2. It didn't even occur to me that a new, well, relatively new character would be such a hard-hitting one. But they did her justice. Better justice than I expect any equivalent character to get in the books. She took a giant out with her last breath, and it was pretty badass. And even as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm kind of tearing up a little for that little badass. But then again, that was an hour in, and all things considered, our main characters were doing pretty good. I mean, all of our main cast were still alive. And yeah, I had turned from a siege into a massacre, and then like a bunch of individuals moving around in the corridors by that point. But that's actually what I would expect from the books too. A handful of point of view characters giving us only a small view of what's going on, not necessarily a large overview. And then we have Beric giving his life, and as Mel says, the Lord of Light brought him back for a reason. And now the reason is gone. Well, in the books his reason was a completely different one, but you know. Somehow the Mormont girl still felt more like she got more accomplished than he did. Then we get one of those fist pump moments. Dracarys. Burn the Night King alive. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention? Somehow he's immune to friggin' fire. And the other terrifying part about fighting a necromancer full of undead army. Everyone you kill, everyone they kill, is just a new member of his army once he starts animating. Oh yeah, and by the way, like I called it last week, hiding in the crypts was a bad idea. And even Little Miss Badass gets turned into a white. And from that point on, everything just goes sad and dark. The Night's King is winning. Although I do want someone to please remember to put Ser Jorah down as the most successful member of the King/Queen's Guard in the history of this TV show. He did more to protect his queen than any two other ones did. And everyone is just right on that verge of dying, and Sansa and Tyrion in the crypts, and Jon facing down a dragon, and like I said, Sir Friendzone in the middle of what's gotta be his worst day ever. Everything looks like it's at its last, and the Night's King has made it to Bran. And our hero, Jon Snow, can't make it in time. There's no possible way. So at this moment, at this darkest of dark moments, when I would think that the Night's King would finally reveal what he wants and what's really going on, instead, we got Arya. And this whole time I've been trying to figure out what I was going to say when I got to this point of the review. And I'm still dumbfounded. Yeah, okay, it was a little bit of trickery. She drops the knife like she's not able to do it, and she catches the knife and then stabs it into him, and there was all of this other stuff going on, and it was, kind of cool, but although I have no doubt that that is a kind of spoiler for the books. In fact, I'm 90% sure what we just saw has very little to do with how the book will get there. But I do bet that she will save Bran's life in the book, too. I sort of thought she was going to kill Mel, too. But I guess not. And I guess that at the same time, there is just this amazing moment where she just accepts death. Did she just use so much magic? Is that why she didn't use magic like this before? Because it had such a cost? It cost her her own life? Leave me your thoughts and opinions on that in the comment section. And of course, leave me what you think about the fact that the Great War is over. I use this picture where I compare this to Babylon 5 a lot. And a lot of people ask me why. Well, you can go check out my video about why we tell war stories that compares the two. But this is another great moment of comparison. You see, Babylon 5 ended its Vorlon Shadow War most of the way through Season 4. And it went on to have 5 seasons, and honestly, the 5th season is the one that I think was the weakest. Now I expect these last 3 episodes are going to feel the weakest here. Not because I think we needed to end in the war that ends all wars. Not by a long shot. I honestly think the books have a different narrative they're going to go for. But at the same time, I don't know, expected there to be more here. It was a dark overall episode, and I mean that both in visual lighting and in mood and somberness. I know Matt Pat did this whole thing about how, in the end, the White Walkers should win, thematically speaking. I disagree with that, too. But at the end of the day, I don't know, I just felt like we never found out what the White Walkers were all about. They were just a nameless, faceless enemy. The other. And that seems so simplistic. And at the same time, this episode was so dark that even the cinematic great fight sequences that I'm sure that when I rewatch I'm going to love, and I was feeling it. I don't know, I just felt like we could have seen more of it. And the Night King himself really ended up falling to what was basically a dirty trick of Arya. Jon didn't really matter much, and we lost a second dragon. And now we're gonna lose Melisandre, and we lost Beric. I mean, losing characters is nothing new in this. We've been losing them since Season 1. But now, I don't know, with the threat of the White Walkers gone, now we're supposed to say Cersei is the big bad evil that we need to face off with? I kind of was afraid this was going to happen. But I'm still holding out hope for there to be some amazing twists. There's still some political intrigue over who will sit the Iron Throne, and even though we never got a full good Azor Ahai thing, I do hope that we're going to end up with more infighting and more questions, and less Cersei and Euron are the main bads, although in the books Euron might actually be the main big bad. Taking of King's Landing is going to be hard, but it's far from impossible, and it'll be far easier than we thought that it ever would be. And now, waiting for the next books, I guess we're just going to have to accept that this is what we've got. And now we've got 3 episodes of Cersei being the enemy. And what does everyone think of that? I'm curious. Do you think she's a worthy adversary for the last couple of episodes? Let me know that down in the comments too, along with your guesses. Does anyone have an actual tally also of who did and didn't die? I don't think I saw Tormund, but again, it was really dark, so I don't think he died. I'm like 90% sure Brienne didn't. I know that Jaime made it. I know that Bran made it, obviously. I know the people who didn't make it, and Theon went out with a blaze of glory. But still, I don't know, like, let me know what you think. And of course, if you don't mind, like and share, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button and join our little community. A big shout out thank you to my Patreons. And as always, we're looking to examine how and why we tell stories. This one felt like a big blockbuster war epic. It just felt like one that didn't quite hit all the themes that I would have hoped for. But all in all, I'm less disappointed in this than I was in Endgame this weekend, so I guess there's something to be said for it. For now, I hope you have a good night, and thank you for walking with me through the heart of the stories we tell.